It's good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back from Hometown Commander, creating another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I take my first pass at the commander in front of us on a budget on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing, and that's what we're back to do today. That deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. So I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video, like, comment, subscribe. Consider checking out those links in the description. I'd appreciate it. But today's commander was one that I was actually already kind of halfway planning for the week of Halloween. We're going to be doing some Halloween themed commanders, and then this week's Secret Scarce Secret Lair drop gave us a reprint of Wilhelt, so I thought I would move it up. Today we're covering Wilhelt, the Rotcleaver, a 4-mana Dimir zombie commander. Of course, was the face of the precon that came out back all the way in Innistrad. That would have been Midnight Hunt, right? Whenever another zombie you control dies, if it didn't have Decayed, you're going to make a 2/2 zombie with Decayed. Note that Decayed means if that zombie will either attack or deal damage, it gets sacrificed. So it's more temporary. It's not going to last forever. In the beginning or end step, you could sack a zombie. If you do, draw a card. So Wilhelt, already a great commander at its own. When zombies die, it can replace it with these Decayed zombie tokens. In the beginning or end step, we could sack a zombie to draw a card. And this is kind of some extent what zombie decks want to do anyway. They kind of tend to be really aristocrat decks. And by that I mean you want to sacrifice your creatures for value. And so that's what we're going to look to do. We're going to try to make these zombies, sacrifice them to either draw cards off of Wilhelt or off of other abilities. And we'll talk about some combos where we can sacrifice a large amount of creatures to deal damage to our opponents. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a little bit early for just $1 a month, please consider checking that out down below. All right. If you're playing Wilhelt, you're playing Wilhelt because you want to play zombies. And zombies are a really fun archetype. There's a lot of really fun things that zombies have access to. And unfortunately, zombies aren't all about zombies. Sometimes it's about the characters we closely relate to zombies. Things like Geese and Geralt. Whenever it comes in, you mill 4, and once per turn, you can cast a zombie out of your graveyard. Liliana, on multiple of her planeswalkers, can actually make zombie creatures. And on this one, she gets to make us a zombie token and mill a couple cards. Our -3 can bring a creature from our graveyard back to the battlefield. It becomes a zombie. And then our -7 destroys all non-zombie creatures. So you can start to see where this Liliana can make us those 2/2 zombies, for Wilhelt to sacrifice. Cleaver Scab lets you pay 3, sack another zombie, and make 2 tokens that are a copy of it. This is a very interesting ability. There's a lot of fun we can have with Cleaver Scab if we pair them with the right zombies. Gleaming Overseer, when it comes and you amass zombies 1, that means you make a zombie army token, and then you put a counter on it, and then every future time you amass, as long as you still have that counter on it, you can put a counter on it. I don't know if you could hear that lightning strike on camera. I'm sorry, it slightly scared me. And then all of our zombie tokens have Hexproof and Menace, which is a really nice ability, especially if we can grow them at all. Hordewing Scab is going to give all of our other zombies flying. Pretty nice, right? Especially if we're going to make a horde of zombie tokens. It says whenever one or more zombies we control hit a player, whenever one or more of our creatures hit one or more opponents, so it's just going to go off once per combat. We draw cards equal to the number of opponents dealt damage this way, and then we discard that many cards if we do. So it is important to remember that zombies in their archetype do have ways to get things back out of the graveyard. So it's not just about, you don't have to be afraid of things getting in the graveyard. We're going to have plenty of ways to get them back. We are in black, so we do have other reanimation style abilities, but zombies themselves also have ways to do it as well. Lord of the Accursed, buffing all our zombies. Then for 2 mana, we can give zombies Menace. Lord of the Undead's going to buff all other zombies. And for 2 mana, we can bring a zombie card from our graveyard back to our hand. The Scarab God, not a zombie, but at the beginning of our upkeep, each opponent loses X, and we scry X, where X is the number of zombies we control. So the more zombies, the better. And then for 4 mana, we can exile a creature card from anyone's graveyard and make a token copy of it. It's a 4/4 zombie. This is a really fun ability, especially if you want to get your opponent's creatures right out of their graveyard. Undead War Chief reduces our zombies, buffs all of our zombies. Dark Salvation has any target player make X 2/2 zombies, and then up to 1 target creature gets -1/-1 for each zombie that player controls. Obviously, most of the time we're going to choose ourselves, and then it's a nice way to remove. Technically, this also could be a removal spell for just 1 black if we had a bunch of zombies. That's kind of interesting. Dread Summons has each player mill X cards. That for each creature card milled this way, we get to make a zombie token. Empty the library lets us sack X zombies and reveal from the top until we reveal a number of zombie creature cards equal to the number of zombies sacrificed this way and put them on the battlefield. This is a huge ability because almost every zombie in our deck is better than the 2/2 zombies we're going to be making. So Empty the Library is pretty much always going to be an upgrade. We're going to sack those 2/2 zombies, probably get value from them when they die, and go dig a bunch of zombies out of our deck that are going to be really great for us. Crowded Crypt, whenever a creature we control dies, we get to put a corpse counter on it, and then for 6 mana, we get to just sacrifice it and make a 2/2 zombie with a Decayed for each corpse counter on it. Could make a potential lot of zombies that way. Curse Claw's Wrappings buffs all of our zombies, and then we can give a creature in our graveyard Embalm. When we embalm it, we exile that card and pay its embalm cost and make a copy of it as a token, but that token's a white zombie. So a very interesting ability, but can really allow you to get things back out of your graveyard. And notably, if that creature isn't a zombie, right, you're making it into a zombie. I don't know if you could hear that lightning crack either. That was close. Then you're making it into a zombie, which is really nice, right? Especially for the purpose of our other abilities. Wand of Orcus is a card I've always liked. Whenever a equipped creature attacks or blocks, in all zombies we control get Death Touch. Death Touch is a great ability. It's going to really prevent our opponents from probably chump blocking our 2/2 zombies, because then they're going to lose whatever they block with. And then whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you make that many zombies. A really nice ability depending on how big your thing is. And if you have these things that, give our zombies flying, or you have a nice big attacker, Wand of Orcus is just going to fill our board up with zombies, right? Endless Ranks of the Dead at the beginning of our upkeep, we make X 2/2 zombies, where X is half the number of zombies we control rounded down. So the idea of Endless Ranks is over the course of turns, you're going to make more and more zombies. You're going to really increase your horde, but we got to start somewhere, and then Endless Ranks will help us out. And then if you're a zombie fan, these are honestly two of my favorite enchantments that have ever been released for zombie decks. The first is Necroduality. Whenever another non-token zombie we control enters, you get to make a token that's a copy of that creature. A large amount of the zombies in our deck are not legendary, meaning that this is going to be great, and it's going to allow you to get extra copies of them. And then a card that can enable some combos in Rooftop Storm. We can pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for all zombie spells we cast. Again, love it. This we'll talk about a little bit later, but Rooftop Storm to me is just peak zombie. And I really like that they changed the art on this one for the borderless reprint. I love the art on this card, and it just really fits that crazy Innistrad zombie, and I love it. Well, okay. I think zombies are great on their own as an archetype. But so many zombies care about what we define as aristocrats. So if you're not familiar, aristocrats as a strategy cares about sacrificing or your creatures dying for more benefit than them just dying. So you want effects that care about when your creatures die and ideally hurt your opponents. And we have that. Diregraph Captain, whenever another zombie control dies, target opponent loses a life. Plague Belcher, whenever a zombie we control dies, each opponent loses a life. Same thing off of Vengeful Dead. So you can start to see where as we're sacrificing these zombie tokens, we're hurting our opponents. So those are like specific zombie-focused things, but it's not just that. You have things like Bashed Remembrance that just say whenever our creature we control dies, each opponent loses 1 and we gain 1. So now it's not just zombies. And your question is probably, well, okay, Millsy, but like, how do you sacrifice your creatures? Because it's sometimes it's inopportune just to run them into your opponents. Well, that's why you have artifacts or creatures that allow you to sacrifice creatures for something. So Phyrexian Altar allows you to sacrifice your creatures for mana. Altar of Dementia lets you sacrifice creatures to have somebody mill cards equal to their power. And the key combos in our deck are going to allow us to use these tools, sacrificing a creature, to get us enough benefit to make a loop happen multiple times to continue to just punish our opponents. But it's not just that. Meathook Massacre, Funeral Room, both these have our opponents lose life whenever creatures we control die. Grave Pact and Dictate of Erebos, which we're not playing, but is another great option. Force all your opponents to sacrifice a creature whenever one of our creatures dies. These are really brutal abilities and can really help our Aristocrats game plan, because a lot of other people's decks are not, unless they're playing a tokens deck, they're not prepared to sacrifice that many creatures to keep up with us. And that's where Grave Pact can come into real handy. But okay, so we talked about the zombies, we talked about the Aristocrats. So now I want to talk about different ways that we could take advantage of loops. So loops in an Aristocrat decks are generally defined as a way to sacrifice a creature and then either make another creature to sacrifice or bring it back. That's generally how you want to make a loop in an Aristocrats deck. And so here's our example of our first loop. In this example, the card on the left doesn't really matter. You just need a way to sacrifice Gravecrawler, which I just picked Carrion Feeder here because it can grow itself. Gravecrawler you could cast from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. So we ideally want another zombie on the battlefield, and I'll tell you, we do want a zombie on the battlefield because ideally Wilhelt, but there's a lot of other zombies that are great, including some of those things that made opponents lose life when our zombies die. And then Rooftop Torm, which says we could pay 0 from creature spells we cast. So there's 2 ways you can make this loop work. As pictured, Gravecrawler would be allowed to be cast back because we have a zombie. And Gravecrawler is just going to keep dying and coming back. And so the way this combo works is we need something outside of this combo that's going to punish or hurt our opponents when our creatures die. Now you can do this without Rooftop Storm. If you replace that Carrion Feeder with a Phyrexian Altar lets you sacrifice a creature for a mana. Well, we could sacrifice Gravecrawler for 1 black mana and then play it back as long as we control a zombie. And that's less cards, but it accomplishes the same things. The only thing we need outside of this setup is one of those effects that punish or hurts our opponents whenever they die. Bash Remembrance, Wilhelt Massacre, Vengeful Dead, those zombies we talked about. And this is how Aristocrats decks generally tend to build their game plan. We found the thing we could sacrifice, we found the way to get it back, and we found the way to damage our opponents, and so we can make that happen. The second shell works with Wilhelt and Poppet Stitch. So Poppet Stitch is a creature that says whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, we get to make a zombie token. But if at the start of our turn we have 3 or more creature tokens, we could flip it over onto the backside to Poppet Factory. This is an artifact that says all of our tokens lose all abilities and have base power and have us 3/3. Now, you may ask, why is that beneficial? Well, remember that Wilhelt, the key thing for whether or not you get a zombie when a zombie dies is whether or not that zombie had decayed. Well, if Poppet Factory takes away the decayed from every zombie, that means Wilhelt is going to replace every single zombie that you sacrifice with another one. So now, all we need is a sack outlet, right? And a way to, get value. And now we can make as many zombies as we want as long as we could sacrifice them. So now you could start to see where you could put these structures into play, right? To get value from the things we're sacrificing. But I've said it before on the show and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. Although we looked at Wilhelt a long time ago, this is my first time looking at it in a while. And I think going into testing, my gut tells me we need more Aristocrats stuff. I think we've got a good amount, but I love the idea of something like Agent of Iron Throne, or we have a few more we have access to. They're just going to allow our opponents to lose life when our things die. It is important to note specifically that in that Poppet Stitch or Wilhelt combo, Altar of Dementia is also an option. Remember, that's the one where you sacrifice a creature and have somebody mill cards equal to its power. Well, you typically don't need to deal damage to somebody in that sense, because remember that if you mill somebody's library out and they go to try to draw and they don't have a card in their library, they lose the game. So that's another functional route, and there could be more ways to pursue that. So I think a lot of the times Aristocrat decks tend to focus on damaging your opponent or having them lose life, but it's important to remember that there are other ways to have a Aristocrat loop, end the game. As far as other cards I think about, I think Into the Pit seems like a really interesting card in this deck. You can look at the top card of your library at any time, and then you can cast spells from the top as long as you sacrifice a non-land permanent, which we're going to have plenty of them laying around. I think that makes a ton of sense. It lets you dig off the top. Lost Monarch of Ifnir came out in the Aether Drift Commander decks, which if you're interested in seeing my brew for Temet, it'll be coming up in about 2 weeks during our Halloween week. We're going to update the Esper Temet from Aether Drift, so don't worry, more zombies are coming. But it gives all of our zombies Afflict 3, so if they would become blocked, defending player loses 3 life, which is a really fun ability and can really help still hurt your opponent. And then beginning your second main, if a player was dealt damage in combat by a zombie, you mill 3 and bring a creature back. So I love that idea of kind of making your zombies a little bit harder to block, because your opponent's going to lose life if they block them. And then, giving you more value. I still think as you go up the bracket in this deck, or you want to put more money into it, a lot of it's going to go into more Aristocrats, more sack outlets. I mean, Phyrexian Arena in itself is already a pretty expensive card, and there's probably people who don't want that. I mean, just by cutting that, you're probably cutting like $60 out of this deck. But there's definitely a route to keep going. And I see some pretty wonky combos with Wilhelt and what you can do. I'll be honest, I sat down and I was doing the deck, and I've wanted an Aristocrats deck for a while. And I was like, man, zombies are kind of fun. I like Wilhelt. I like new printing. There's a lot of fun cards. I'm just staring at it on screen, so I'll show it. There's the Innistrad Remasters reprinting of Meat Hook Massacre that looks pretty cool. I was like, maybe it'd be time to mess around with Wilhelt. So maybe it's something I'll mess around with in the background, and if I get anywhere, I'll let you guys know. But let's do what we love to do on the channel the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not just to show off all our best plays, but to get in some gameplay scenarios and kind of understand what are we looking at and how we're going to set our game plan up. So here we got a 3-lander. Mortuary Wire does come in tapped. Our unclaimed territory gives us either color, but only for zombies. And then Shipwreck Marsh. We see Soaring. We have an Undead War Chief Deadly Cover-Up, which is a board wipe, and then Wand of Orcus. So I like it. We've got a decent amount of value here. It's just going to come down to getting our things into play. There's Rooftop Storm, kind of fun. We're at 3, 4, 5 mana, so we're just like really 1 mana off of Rooftop Storm. Either of these are going to come in tapped. At the moment, I have no way to play Wand of Orcus, do I? I would have had to have done that or that last turn to play Wand of Orcus this turn. That was a mistake. I probably should have done that. Well, then I wouldn't have been able to play the... Then I wouldn't be able to play the Soul Ring, right? Well, if I'd done that last turn, and I did this into the Soul Ring, then I could have played the Wand of Orcus. That, I think, is the line that makes the most sense. Because then this turn, you could still get in Wilhelt, right? I was just trying to think in my head. Yeah, and this is what playtests are good for, because you can kind of learn, oh, well, what line makes the most sense? How do I, sit here to myself and think about... So 5 mana, I mean, attaching Wand of Orcus is 3, which would cut most of my turn out. I don't even hate just going Endless Ranks of the Dead. Start that going. If I equip, I've only got 2 mana. Now, I would have a potential chance at getting a couple zombies, unless somebody has a blocker. If somebody's completely wide open on turn 4, I think I just slam the Orcus and get going, get 3/2/2 zombies, and I think I'd be pretty happy. But the only problem with the Endless Dead is I'm not going to get a zombie next turn off the Endless Dead because I only have 1 zombie. So it's probably not the play this turn anyway, right? Now that I think about it. I guess it could be the War Chief. Buff Wilhelt. I don't really want to sack the War Chief for drawing cards, right? So now the next turn, now Endless Ranks could be good because you could get more. But if I attach Wand of Orcus, now Wilhelt's a 5/4, so you have a better chance of getting that. And I think I can get Wand of Orcus in and still play the Reaper, right? Because it gets reduced by 1 from the War Chief. And again, the hope here is that Wilhelt gets in. Again, I can't guarantee that it does, but there's a chance. Now I'm at 5 mana, just 1 mana off of that Rooftop Storm. Because the Rooftop Storm's not going to get reduced, right? Because it's not a zombie spell. I don't even hate Dark Salvation here just to get a couple more, but I think it's Endless Ranks. Now that we know we can get some zombies off of it, and then get to attacking again. Hope that Wilhelt gets us a couple zombies. If not, it's okay because they're getting a nice buff and they all have Death Touch on attack. And then on our upkeep, we're going to get 1 zombie, right? Off the Endless Ranks. Well, there's Crowded Crypt, right? That helps us with the issue we were having on the mana. I guess we could go Dreadhorde Invasion, start getting zombies that way, and that could go off before Endless Ranks to get us another one. We could Dark Salvation for 1, and really hurt an opponent. But again, a little bit awkward on this one, but we got a nice setup going. And the Crowded Crypt really helps. Remember that Wilhelt could have sacked that zombie last turn and draw a card. Now that I think about it, and also still could this turn. All right, so we do have some ways to keep digging. I think the setup's there. It's just going to be continuing to dig for, more mana and ways to do things. And I think we're in good shape because if Wilhelt dies, I mean the wand stays around. You could always attach it to a token. I mean, all we're looking for now would be a way to get the Rooftop Storm down, and we do. The next turn, we'll be able to get Rooftop Storm down. The only downside there is we don't have any zombies in our hand. But, I mean, it would be useful for even just getting Wilhelt out, right? Because Wilhelt's a zombie. I think you could start to see, we had some good pieces there. I think it was just about my pathing and then, trying to figure out what makes the most sense. Here for playtest, we got a big 4-lander. There's the Crowded Crypt, there's the Bastion, and there's Geisa and Geralf. Note that Crowded Crypt does not care about zombies dying to put corpse counters on it, so that's nice. Remember, Geisa and Geralf, when it comes in, mills a couple cards, and then once per turn, right, you can cast something back out of the graveyard. Here, I think it just makes sense for the Crowded Crypt. Ooh, I was gonna say, does this change my mind? That's 6 mana? 3 from that, and then the triple black. My thought was just gonna be Geese and Geralf come in, mill the 4, and then set up playing zombies on a future turn, but does it make sense to just Wilhelt instead? Let's try Geese and Geralf and see. 1. No zombies in the grave, which is kind of stinky, but it does happen. So now Dark Ritual would be... Dark Ritual would have been 7 mana last turn because of the Crowded Crypt, right? Okay. Well, sometimes you gotta count, right? Doesn't help me out very much. We'll go Wilhelt. Bastion for the Soldier. And then remember, Wilhelt can only sack a zombie to draw a card. But that's okay. And then we come to our next turn. It's 5 mana. I like the Scab to give the flying. Dark Salvation could get us a couple zombies and potentially knock somebody else's thing out. I was thinking, Dark Salvation for 2. Give something -4/-4. Now you can, sack that to draw for him on end step. That gets a counter. Bastion hurts our opponents a little bit. And then now what? 6 mana. You could leave up the plating, get the, Lord of the Accursed there. Sorry, we would have gotten the 2/2 with Decayed. Lord of Accursed there to buff things. I still don't have any zombies in the graveyard to get back. 3 mana left. I think I just keep up the plating just to protect myself. You also can keep up the hybridization. Attack. I think I'd rather just... I was going to say, would I rather sack the zombie to Wilhelt to draw a card or just not attack with it? Attack with this one and then sack it on end step to draw a card and get another decayed, zombie. And again, now we're just going to keep digging. Unfortunately, we haven't seen really as many of the things we'd want to see, right? But I think it's important to kind of still see what your baseline is. Diagraph's going to help with making some more zombies. Hordewing Scab could get everything in the air. Scarab God could hopefully just start putting some pressure on our opponents. Remember that Lord of the Accursed can tap to give out Menace. Wish I just had access to another real nice way to make zombies. I guess Scarab God can do that. I guess if I play this, I'm holding up the Rapid Hybrid. If I play Diagraph Colossus, I'm holding up the Lazotep. Although Diagraph doesn't come in with anything on it, does it? Because we have no zombies in our graveyard. Well, at least it can make future 2/2s. And then I'd probably just sack one of my Decayed zombies at end step to draw a card. That'll still get you the trigger off of Bastion, but it won't make another 2/2 right itself. And then there's the Orcus. The Orcus could be really good on Wilhelt or one of these other guys, right, to get some more 2/2s. Again, on playtest 2, they're not seeing a ton of the good stuff, but again, it's important to still work your hands through, work your stuff through to understand, right, how your deck functions, and then maybe that tells us, oh, we need some more card draw. Oh, we need some more buffs or things like that, and then we can, better look at that as we go through our testing. Here, 4-land with the Soul Ring, so lots of mana. We see Poppet Stitcher, we see the Dread Summons. Bastion's not a bad start. Just allowing us to get some... I think it's Wilhelt. 5. I almost want to summons for 3. And, maybe we pick up a couple of zombies from our opponents. My thought there is just trying to get some incremental value. There's the Dread Return. Can help us get things back from the yard. 6 mana. Cleaver Scab. Cleaver can cleave a token if you wanted to. You know, that is an option. Go plop, pop it plus Bastion. And then at least as it sits, you'd be able to flip this Stitcher over next turn, which is what I would probably do. Just so then we can freely sack those zombies if we have any way to freely sack them, right? So now you're looking at 6 mana. Dread Return would basically mean I could sack both of those, or that's on the flashback, sorry. And that's right, I don't have any creatures in there. I could empty the library, sack these 2 zombies, go dig for 2 more, and then I'm going to get 2 zombies from it because of Wilhelt, which could be interesting. That also gets off Bastion. And hey, you never know what 2 zombies you're going to get. So let's see, what 2 zombies are we going to run our way into? The Accursed and the Overseer. And what happens to the spare cards on the bottom? So now you're getting 2 creatures with Decayed, and then you're getting the Zombie Army token with a counter from Gleaming Overseer, right? So now they all have Hexproof and Menace, which is nice. The Accursed is now buffing them. And then on end step, I was going to say what makes the most sense. Sack the zombie to draw, right? Because you get 1 back because of his ability. Again, another trigger off of the Bastion. As it comes to this turn, Skylord gives all of our zombie tokens flying, which is interesting. We can amass more onto there. Cleaver Scab's interesting. Again, nothing just quite yet for the Dread Return. Skylord, this goes up 2, and they all have flying. Then my thought is, right, take the attacks, right? You've got the bonus and the flying Hexproof and Menace. And then on end step, sack, draw, you get another 1 back, you get the Bastion trigger. And I think now, we can hold up the Swan Song. We're just trying to dig into any way to get something off of sacrificing them, or some way to sacrifice them, right? Because we have the Poppet Stitcher giving me a way to sack zombies for free. Now the thing we need is just any profit, any way to sack them immediately, right? And we're golden, right? So literally anything, an altar, Carrion Scab, there's so many ways to do it. We just basically have to dig in, right? And I think we're still in good shape. So we missed part of it, but again, I think this is another one of those important playtests, because if you see a lot of playtests like that, right, then you go, oh, I need more free sack outlets, right? And then, you can adjust your list for it. Last playtest here, 4-lander with Plague Belcher and Headless Rider. So Belcher, remember, whenever another zombie dies, each opponent loses 1. And then Headless Rider, whenever another non-token zombie dies, you get a zombie token. So interesting nonetheless. So there is another zombie we can talk about in Acererak. So it says, whenever it comes in, if we haven't completed Tomb of the Annihilation, we return it back to our hand and venture into a dungeon. Acererak that actually does have a combo with Rooftop Storm. Because so if you look at the 3 dungeons, we have a couple options of dungeons here. But we don't even know if we're going to see Rooftop Storm. But I just want to explain this so that if you ever hit across this in this deck, you understand. So these are the 3 dungeons you have a choice of anytime you venture into a dungeon. So Tomb Annihilation is the one that Acererak's talking about. So unless you remove it, as you've gone through, it comes back to our hand and we get into a dungeon. Well, if you look at Lost Mine of Phandelver, as long as you go down this left path, Darkpool has life go to each opponent, we gain a life. Not only does that, it nets us tokens, it costs us cards. Well, everybody has 40 life. So if you go through Phandelver 40 times, you definitely knock everybody out. And if you have Rooftop Storm out, right, a Acererak Seeding cast for free, meaning it's bouncing back to your hand for free, and you can just go through as many times as you want. Dungeon, to my knowledge, doesn't have any free damage, but it does give you a bunch of value as well. So that's just one of those weird options that's there if you have it. I don't really see any reason of playing it. I think I'll play the Rider. Only important thing to remember off the Belcher is it does kind of hurt creatures when it comes in. We'll do that. We'll use that one we bounced to fund the Soul Ring. So now we've got 5 mana. think I'll play the Belcher, put them on the Rider, because the Rider's going to make a 2/2 zombie when it dies. And I've got, what, 2 mana left? Nothing I really want to do there. End step, I think I'll just get a Decayed Zone one for drawing, and then, you know, everybody loses a life because of the Belcher. Now we're, what, 8 mana? Lots of mana to go around. Well, Gisa, just to see what we get ourselves into. There's the Phyrexian Altar, right? Would have loved to have seen that. We see Lord of the Curse there that we can now get back. Same thing with the Rider, right? We can now get both of them back with Gisa and Garo if we're allowed to cast 1 per turn. I've got 3 mana left. Get the Accursed. And then, you know, attack, right? End step, same thing. Trade that zombie in for another Decayed to draw, just to see, right, what we can get ourselves access to. Talisman, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. Wand and Attach is 6. I'd love to put that on something like the Plague Belcher, right? Since it already has Menace, you might have a good chance of getting into somebody, which makes sense to me. And then, again, sack it to draw. Curse Claws Wrathings there can 10 mana, can buff all of our zombies. You could go that, 6 left. We could Meat Hook for 0 if we wanted to, just to get it down for its ability. Or we could just Dread Summons, just try to dig and see what we get, try to get some zombies off of it, and then set up some nice plays. I mean, you could go 8 deep on the Dread Summons you want to. You're probably just going to end up making a ton of zombie tokens, right? And then you've got them buffed. You've got them, you know, dealing damage when they die. You know, they're buffed up. Skylord could get all the tokens in the air next turn, you know. Or you could, you know, we could do this for 4 and then, you know, Dread Summons for 4. But I kind of like just going deep on the Dread Summons there. Kind of an odd hand. You know, we didn't see as much of the ways to make tokens as we would have liked. But again, I think that's the important part to remember, that this is our first shot. You know, this is what you find in testing. You figured out, do I need more of this? Do I need less of this? You know, make the changes, iterate, right? So your deck can get better. I'd love to know, what do you think of Wilhelt? I think I'm going to try this one for myself at some point. I don't know when, but I think Wilhelt seems fun. It's something I might try. I've got a couple other decks that I've been tinkering with more lately that are probably going to take the priority over Wilhelt. But I think it could be fun. I've also really considered Temet, and we'll talk about Temet on the week of Halloween. I've got that one coming up too as well. But I'd love to know what you think of Wilhelt, and I will catch you in the next one.